Hey everyone, welcome to the Midpoint. You know that with this podcast, I want to talk to guests about different aspects of our lives and get their views on sometimes polarized topics so that we can take some insights away to ourselves on how to live a more balanced life. Now, today is going to be a very complex topic, and I wasn't really sure how to tackle this because it affects corporations, it affects consumers, it pretty much affects every individual around the world, including nature. Today, we're going to talk about plastic. Plastic is everywhere. And plastic also ends up everywhere. It's a wonderful material, but it can also be very harmful. So we'll try something new today. And we're going to talk to two guests in two different life situations in a way. We're going to talk to Joel, co-founder of Cleanhub, based in Germany, and also one of his co-workers, Lakshmi, who is based in India and also an expert on waste management. Now, Cleanhub is a company that recovers plastic that has already been introduced into nature and helps us get that into the recycling circle again, which is a wonderful thing. Since this is such a complex topic, and I really don't necessarily know how to behave when it comes to recycling a pizza box, they're going to tell me, and it's going to be a super interesting topic. Enjoy. Before we go there, though, please subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome to the podcast, both of you.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So we've been talking about finding balance in life and sort of touched on many different aspects of life, particularly sort of things that come close to the heart. Now, plastic might not be a topic first-handed that you think, I need to really care about that. But if you start reflecting on how much plastic we use in our day-to-day life, it's everywhere. And sometimes it worries me. Sometimes, I think it's a great necessity. It keeps things away from my food, for example, in my fridge. It's sometimes super comfortable if you have sort of something sturdy that is really made of strong plastic that you can maybe exercise on. But then again, every once in a while, maybe once a week, I'm throwing out this big, massive bag of garbage. And I think the majority in there is plastic. So how can we change that in the future, or maybe already today? I'm looking forward to have that conversation with both of you, and especially see your viewpoints coming sort of from different parts of the world as well, where problems might be also a little bit different. So maybe let's jump in with you, Lakshmi. Give me a little bit of background how you ended up sort of in this world of waste management.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little crooked path. So I didn't really plan to get into waste management. I have always worked in different roles where I'm working with communities. So I started off doing that a little bit with theater. I used to work in corporate before I joined here. I think it's a very cultural thing. A lot of people in India are either engineers or doctors. I'm an engineer. And I had to take that path for some time till I could choose for my own choices in life. So then once I thought that I could work with communities, I landed up this organization. I found this organization called Hasiru Dala. It means Green Force. And they worked with informal waste workers. And I felt that's a great community to work with. They're all around, at least in places that I live. So,
what's an informal waste worker?
An informal waste worker is somebody who would do the waste work. That's basically collection of waste, sort it, and sell it. But sell it into the recycling supply chain. But they are not employed by anyone. So the
Gotcha.
income they make is what they sell. So because of that, they would not have benefits. They would live off waste that they pick up on the street. They don't get access to very clean waste. So yeah, so that's a very real thing here. And we are trying to, a lot of organizations are trying to integrate the informal waste workers into the formal systems, which are now growing as we improve our waste management.
And is the industry going to replace the informal waste work in the long run, or?
No, I don't think that So it's a bit of a mix, right? Because as we grow and as we develop, we also want cleaner cities. We also want to make sure that all the waste is collected. So it can't be only the recyclable waste. So there is that problem.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a large group of people who are working in this sector. So how do we integrate them? How do we take them along? And that's
sort of an
challenge.
ecosystem that needs to work nicely together.
Yeah. I think there's also, I think the UN treaty also is talking about informal waste workers being integrated into waste management. So this is a recognized workforce. So the only thing is that when we have stronger waste management systems and processes, we also consider this expertise that they bring along.
Mm-hmm. And how did you realize that you sort of went from corporate into this cause? What made you realize that you wanted to dedicate yourself to this?
It wasn't really a choice to waste management. It was more of a choice to work with an organization that works with communities. But I think maybe sometimes, right, like deep down, you're so connected to all the initiatives of environment related. Like when I grew up, I used to spend a lot of time with my grandparents and in my hometown villages. And I guess something of that led me to this. I don't have a real straight answer.
No, but it's a great cause to dedicate yourself to, especially because it has such an impact also on a larger community. You were mentioning during the past conversation we had, sort of like 30 to 40,000 people are sort of involved in that, involved in that community.
Yeah, in a city like Bangalore, definitely there is that kind of numbers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a large workforce. Yes.
But you see that throughout the country, I guess, right? So it's
yes, yeah, definitely. Every large city has got these kind of large numbers. But if you go to even smaller towns, anywhere, right? Because this is a sector where you don't have any entry barrier. Anyone can go pick up plastic on the roadside and sell it, and there is income. So it's a very prevalent thing across. And you find a lot of people who are also migrant workers, which are people who have come from smaller villages and towns and they don't find work. They come to cities and they do this work. So it is. So they are there everywhere.
Wonderful. How about you, Joel? It's like what got you into this industry?
I think for me it was really in the beginning personal annoyance because I like surfing, I like being in the ocean, I like traveling. So all the privilege hobbies in the world, basically, I have all the things that, or the advantages of growing up in Germany, in the end led me to it, right? Because if you go surfing, if you go to Indonesia, if you go to any country in Southeast Asia and you want to enjoy nature, you were confronted with plastic pollution. There's a lot of people locally that work on the topic that do a great job. But for me, it was really in the beginning that personal annoyance that made me curious, right? Even if you climbed the volcano in Indonesia, you sat at the bonfire at night and the guide would just throw all the plastic into the bonfire so that it's gone. And then you sit there in the stench of burning plastic. And there was something where I was like, okay, this is different from what I know from growing up at Lake Constance. Again, I think one of the most privileged areas in Germany to grow up in, where everything is clean, where you grow up in the environment, where you spend your time in and on the lake if you grow up, where you can go to the mountains. I mean, you grew up in Switzerland and you go there and it's nature, right? There's very little pollution on the roads. And this is what I grew up knowing. And then you notice the difference. And over time, I developed this hypothesis for myself that I believe we live our best lives on a clean planet. And that goes for everyone, right? That no matter who you are, where you grew up in, what kind of species you are, even if you're a fish, it's nicer to swim in a clean sea than in pollution. If you grow up in a coastal village in India, it's nicer to live there if you're not constantly sitting next to a fire pit with open burning waste. And yeah, I think this is something that kind of unites everybody. And so from a personal annoyance, it developed into a cause for me. And I wouldn't say that there was this one eureka moment where I was like, okay, this is the issue that I'm trying to tackle, but it was more gradual and built over time. And yeah, that's how I got here.
We definitely got to talk about what you guys do at Cleanhub in a moment, but maybe one picture that came to my head right now, since you mentioned Switzerland and nature, is when you walk around, you're totally right. You go on a hike and you would see, let's say, somebody's trash on the side, or sort of maybe a little peat, sort of a bottle cap or something. My initial reaction would be to pick it up, put it into my pocket, and then at the next, I think in Switzerland, it feels like every 500 meters there's also a garbage bin. Like we have so many garbage bin all the way everywhere. I don't know who empties them, to be honest. I've never seen it. Yeah. Well, maybe not on the mountain, but in the city, I think every few hundred meters you have a garbage bin, right? So I think from a society perspective, maybe also we notice it because there's so few things lying around. Sometimes I see somebody throw out his McDonald's bag like while driving. This is one of the most annoying things when you see this.
It's like,
yeah, this makes me furious too.
When you see it, it's like what kind of person are you?
Yeah. What were you thinking? Because there's literally no benefit to do this compared to just taking it outside at the parking, because there definitely will be a bin there.
Exactly.
So maybe there's also an inflection point when everybody does it, then you stop behaving, in a clean way, and you just basically start doing as well. I've no idea where this tipping point is, but I wanted to narrow in a little bit first on this impact plastic has on the environment, sort of, and how society reacts to it. How is it in India, Lakshmi? Sort of when you think of how it used to be in the past and how it is today, how's plastic impacted society in India?
I think in plastic in general, usage of plastic has increased so much. Like in my own living life, when I was in school, I would see that we never threw plastic out. We kept plastic. Like we had one plastic bag that had all the plastic bags of the house kept together.
Oh, wow.
And we would sell it.
You could sell it?
Yeah, we could sell it. We could sell milk pouches. We would get like quite a high amount for milk pouches. And even like if you go out and buy, there was a lot of things that we would buy without plastic packaging. We would buy in bulk, and it's a lot more work. Like even if you have to take bread flour, like atta that we say, wheat flour, we would buy the wheat, wash it, dry it, take it to a mill, make a powder of it, and then keep it. And I've done that. So it's not like my grandmom used to do it. I've never done. I've done that. So, but then now when I look back, I still have a mill near my house, but it's considered. I mean, the wheat quality that you buy in bulk is not the same, and you end up buying like packets of atta because you also buy very less now. So I can see that the plastic has increased so much in consumption on a daily basis. I mean, just household plastic consumption, and the idea of buy a small packet, which is cheaper than buy a large bottle, which is more expensive, is so common here. You get everything in smaller pouches, smaller sachets. And that's also increased quite a bit. So if I travel to my hometown, the villages, definitely you can see these shops with chains, like garlands of these sachets in every small shop. That wasn't so prevalent before. It would be bottles of things that were there, and they would pick it up and wrap it in paper and give you. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit.
Selling your plastic bags. I mean, like today, I'm guessing, I remember my time sort of in supermarkets, where they double bag your bag into free plastic bag. Like plastic has no value anymore in that sense, right? Compared to being able to sell it. Here in Switzerland, they started, like many other supermarket chains around the world, started to charge for the bag, and just by making it 10 cents or 20 cents. I think the use of bags have dropped a lot, which I think is a good thing. But still, I don't associate any worth to these plastic bags, which unfortunately have a big impact, right? So if no value, you also don't care and throw them away, maybe. Yeah.
Well, maybe to build a bridge here to anyone who's listening from Switzerland, I think the
or
the
elsewhere.
value of waste, the value of waste in your country is basically determined by whether or not you sort it separately. So I lived in Zurich for 3 years, and you always have to make these bundles of cardboard because this is valuable, right?
It's a very Swiss
There's
thing.
a company, but this is something because it can be recycled. It can go back into another product, so there's a value to it, right? And it's the same thing for Lakshmi's example of the milk bags. We worked with the recycling company that turns that into hoses for agriculture.
Yeah.
So they recycle it into a new product, so they have an interest in the product itself. And I think that's one of the striking points about going to especially India, but also Indonesia, going to Cambodia, where people did not grow up or still don't have that level of abundance like we have it in Germany and in Switzerland, where we can afford everything, right? Where even 10 cents for a plastic bag is nothing major. You see that the secondary markets for material work way, way better than here. They are way further in regards of a circular economy than we are, because whatever contains even the slightest amount of value is going to be collected and it's going to be sold to someone. And then whatever holds no value, where you can't turn it into a product to sell it, this is something that people don't touch.
Can I ask on this example with the milk pouches, or sort of with that material that's being recycled into these hoses? How do they? Does it have to be a very specific plastic, or do they recognize this as a specific plastic that it can be reused? Like how's that? I mean, I wouldn't know what I know PET, because that's what we recycle in Switzerland as bottles, and we just do that separately. Then there's this whitish kind of milk bottles. I don't know what the abbreviation for it is, but it has some sort of a sign. You can
Most
tell.
likely HDPE.
Sure. But that's it. Any other plastic looks the same to me. So how does that work with this labeling? I mean, I guess you can't just throw every plastic into the same stream. You have to separate them.
Yeah, and that's a core issue. Maybe I'm quickly gonna tackle that.
Go for it,
and then Lakshmi, you can explain how people do it in India. But the core issue in plastic is like we have 8 bigger groups. So we have PET, which is the water bottle. We have HDPE, which is mostly shampoo bottles and the milk bottle that you mentioned. Then there's polypropylene, PP, which, for example, the bottle caps are made of. Then you have LDPE, low-density polyethylene, which is anything that you make carry bags out of, for example, so the soft plastic. Then you have PVC, polyvinyl chloride, for example, for window frames and all that. Then there's...
That's the heavy stuff, no? That's the hard, heavy stuff.
Hard, heavy stuff, very difficult also to recycle. Then you have PS, polystyrene. The most famous example is... the packaging, for example,
packaging
furniture comes in and then you have others, and others is another piece to do. Plus, you can mix all these different types of plastic together. So, for example, in a falafel packaging or whatever, you might have a thin foil of PET and glued to that laminated another foil of LDPE, because they have different material properties that are there for different uses. And then if you go into a chips bag, you will have an additional layer of aluminum to keep moisture out.
Or Tetra Pak as well. Doesn't Tetra Pak also have this additional layer?
Layers. And as soon as you have more than one layer, so-called multi-layers, this packaging cannot be recycled anymore, or very, very difficult, or the quality of the recycled product is very low. So if you throw in 100 different foils into one melter and melt it together, you will not know the output quality of that product. So it's impossible to return that into food packaging, for example, where you need to know exactly how the packaging is composed, because packaging is there to protect, preserve and promote the product that it contains. And if the material is mixed, you don't know if it has the right criteria to protect and preserve the product. It's better for promotion because you can say it's recycled, but if it fails on the first two, it's bad quality. But maybe Lakshmi, you can explain how it works, that people know what it actually is then.
Oh, yeah. It's not, I think, it's a lot of very lay knowledge. It's not so this is a very technical knowledge. But when you're selling off, like in a household, for example, if it is milk pouches, like when I was younger, it doesn't happen anymore. So let's be clear. Yeah. We would store it for at least like a month, 2 months, because if you're going to have this one pouch, which is food grade, so it has value for it, but only in quantity it makes sense to really go and sell it. And you can't go and sell 2 milk pouches; nobody will give you any money for it. So you also need quantity, right? So there is some amount of sorting that happens. Only then you have value for it. So what Joel said is absolutely right. It's the change that has happened now is that the value, like how you said, has dropped so much so that it doesn't make sense to store this in different categories for a long period of time. There is no space in the homes. Nobody values it as much. So that's the shift that has happened. But the process is exactly the same. What we do now is that we sort into larger categories, say dry, that is all paper, plastic, metal, glass, that is given away. And that goes into sorting centers where, like how Joel said, all these different categories will, and the mixed categories also, like there is some recycling, but it won't be recycled into the same category. So it's not 8. When it goes to a sorting center, they sort it into 14, 15 categories. And each category, they build the volume and then send it for recycling. So it's a
How do they know
process.
what category it is? Based on what it was before? Because it was a shampoo, they assume it's there? Or?
Yeah. So, that is... So if you take a shampoo bottle and any of the hard plastic, it's easier to know that this is HDPE. And this is a trained knowledge. The sorters are also trained for it. Then different categories of plastic have different touch and feel, different sounds. So they also try and use that as training. The technical knowledge will be known and will be passed on to the sorters as well. So you can learn it, but it's quite technical, and I don't know whether everybody will get it in this.
I completely see the issue. I completely see the issue.
The most famous example might be or that probably a lot of the listeners will know, is like if you ever played with Lego and you took the Lego bag out of a cardboard box, it made this crackling noise. And that is this is polypropylene, and polypropylene makes that crackling noise as a foil when you play with it. An LDPE foil will not make that sound.
Okay, Joel, I have to say, speaking to the niche audience of Lego enthusiasts, I have to say it's a good example. But no, just kidding, because you just triggered something in me. I don't do a lot of Lego sets, or haven't really done in the past, but I know exactly which crackling you're actually talking about.
Yeah.
It is different. Yeah. Maybe another example, going back to the Swiss people. Yes, we sort cardboard, and we also sort paper separately. Like cardboard is not paper. And I'm usually getting to that issue when you have this thing between that is just not paper, but maybe still not cardboard. And I usually don't know where to throw this, but in a very simplistic way, that's basically one of the issues of sorting things out.
Yeah.
And where it gets crazy, you're not allowed to, for example, put used pizza cartons into cardboard recycling.
I did not know that. Because of the plastic issue, plastic coating, or what's the issue?
Then it's quite contaminated with all the fat from the pizza, so the quality is pretty low. So they don't want it in proper cardboard recycling because it starts smelling and all that. And at least in Germany, it has to go into residue waste, so it goes for incineration.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, this is such a complex topic, honestly. Like I'm sure we could talk for 2 hours about this. I really want to just go one step back to the one small side note that you made, Lakshmi, with these small packages in India. I remember this clearly as sort of a case study at my university, where bigger food and consumer good producers were actually selling this as a win. They couldn't crack India. They couldn't crack some of the markets that were coming sort of onto the world stage. Let's say it was a while back when I studied. So let's say 20 plus years ago. But they really sold this as a win that, we cracked it because we now make smaller packages, which makes it more affordable at that time. And I think that has now, it sounds like this is still a thing. And but it doesn't sound like it should be sold as a win anymore. Are these all, I guess, multi-layered packagings? And
it's a mix. Yeah, it's a mix of multi-layer and plastic packaging itself. Like there are just like, for example, diapers are now sold as one unit each, and that's one of the biggest things that gets sold. And like it's an absolute need. So why would you like? We can't say it shouldn't be there as well, right? So
I guess you need more than one a day as well.
Yeah, and it only will be like if they are using it, if they're traveling with the baby outside or something like that, right? So there is a need to it as well. And this is also addressed to part of the society where they are actually quite sustainable with everything else. So you can't like hold them accountable because they're using this few things, right, which are in smaller packaging. The win, I would say, is that the access that they have, I mean, this gets very, very complicated. So it affects lives in so many different ways. But they do have access to all these products now because it is in small packaging. I think the problem is not the access. It's the problem of how do we get it back, because after they consume it. And I don't think that they are the largest consumers of plastic. So then how do we make sure that that's also brought back? Because when you look at large cities, it is not so much the sachet kind of purchase.
So what happens to these? Let's just make an example of, let's say, the foil of a, I don't know, of a detergent. Sort of, you have these little detergent packages, right? I've seen this before. What happens to these in a circular sort of fashion right now, or do they end up in a landfill?
If there is no proper infrastructure, So currently, if there is a collection system, then it will be collected. If there is no collection system, then pouches like this will not be collected. It will be burnt, or it will just be thrown away. And if it is collected and there is no infrastructure, then it will go to a landfill. When I say infrastructure, it means like a possibility of sorting this out and sending it for any kind of processing. It could be, I don't know, alternate plywood or co-processing, like energy recovery or any of that, right? But there needs to be the supply chain to make sure that this is sorted out of the regular waste and then sent. So if in the absence of any of these steps, it will be landfill.
Can we use any of these multi-layer packaging in some way except for burning them and capturing the heat?
There's a lot of work happening for this to find. Nothing is as scalable at this point in time, and no other system really accepts waste of all kinds at this point in time. So if there is possibility, I have seen trial things of making alternative plywood, like you can use it for park benches and stuff like that. There is also chemical recycling, again, very initial, but they don't accept all of the waste. So because of that, co-processing is still one of the most popular scalable solution. Joel, do you want to add, because he's been doing a lot of studies on this?
No more abbreviations though.
No. Okay. I think what we probably learned so far, besides all the different abbreviations, is that there's waste that has value because you can turn it into a product. And then there's waste that you just cannot turn into a product, so it doesn't hold any value. And then if you have to dispose of it, that always costs money. No disposal service in this world says it's like, all right, just give it to me free, or I'm even going to give you money for it. Yeah. So if we want to dispose of the material, even if it goes into energy recovery, we have to pay for the disposal of that. So we have to pay the cement plant, for example, to accept that waste, even though they win back energy from that, right? At least in most of the cases. The problem here is now, and we talked about that, right? It's like this strategy of bringing in these small units, single unit serves or single serve units, is especially to also capture the market of the low income families. And what that means in reverse is that the waste quality in low-income households is very, very low. So very little material can actually go into recycling, which means it's more expensive to manage that waste because you can't recover any of the value from the waste. And that means that it's just not happening. Nobody is interested in that low-value waste. So especially these low-income families are not receiving waste management services because A, they can't pay for it. If you have $150 household income, you're not going to spend $1 on waste management.
Yeah, you have different priorities.
Yeah, and the brands are not being held responsible either, right? It's like, it's fine for them to sell the products, but they forget to price in the collection and disposal costs for that material.
It's funny because they and also we as consumers are willing to pay to buy it, but not to get rid of what we cause, right? So that's in a nutshell what he's saying. So where would corporations and consumers be able to react then? I mean, let's leave out the consumers for now because you mentioned sort of the lower incomes families, and then they are driven by other variables. So how can corporations then react? Should they invest more into packaging that will have high value resources, or what would be the solution then to that?
Yes, I think to reverse plastic pollution, we have to collect more plastic than what we produce, and that has two elements. It's like A, collect more, and B, produce less or better, right? And if I know that the material that I put on the market cannot be recycled, this is the first thing that I should tackle. Do it in a way that it is a monolayer packaging, so that there's not two different kinds of material. That's the first step. Nestlé invested $1 billion in that. They have a massive research center in Switzerland. It's not an easy task, but this needs to be done. Yeah. The second thing is that the corporation, if they want to reach this market, they should pay for the waste management service.
Sort of
that is something
like a tax. Or well, tell us a bit about Cleanhub. So how do you do that? How do they pay you?
We believe that every externality that you cause as a business, and externality meaning that if you do business, you will have a negative impact on the environment. 100% with every single thing that you do. Always there will be externalities. And companies should pay for these externalities because else nobody is doing it. Yeah, and this is why we approach companies and say, look, it's fine to sell that. It's fine to explore that market, but don't forget about the waste management cost. So we approach brands and say, look, you're selling material into these markets. We're going to collect that material, but you have to pay us for that. That's in a nutshell what Cleanhub does. So we want the externalities to be priced in. And then we find local waste management partners in the countries where we're active, and basically subcontract them to collect the waste, to sort the waste, to make sure that it goes into the right disposal. And what we as a company do is we build the software to make sure that this work happens, to hold both sides of the market accountable so that the brand that puts money into the market can see that the work is happening. And by that also increase trust in the market so that we can see more investments from consumer good brands into the waste collection.
So you're mainly also focus not just the fact that you're working with these partners to do the actual work, but you also help create transparency sort of throughout the whole. I mean, it's kind of I guess a very foggy space because you can't really track plastic or pieces of plastic to go somewhere. So in the end, they're not necessarily paying for their own packaging to be taken care of, but sort of an equivalent, or how does that work?
Yeah. The mass equivalent.
Mass equivalent, kilos, or okay,
exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, tons. Unfortunately, we're talking about tons.
Oh man,
hundreds and thousands of tons, actually millions of tons.
How can you put that a little bit into perspective? Talking about millions of tons, can you put that into perspective? Like when you say we should use less, or you lose less plastic or recover it, how realistically, pragmatically speaking, how much of it can be reduced and how much has to be recovered? Because plastic is everywhere, right?
There's a whole different set of philosophies there. I don't think that we know the answer, to be quite frank. We will not reduce our way to zero. We will not recycle our way to zero. And we will not replace plastic to zero.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I can't say with 100% confidence. What exactly the percentages are depends a lot also on the country, right? The standard German citizen consumes 120 kilogram of plastic every year, where I think the per capita use in India is still at 0.71 kilogram.
Oh, wow.
So dramatically less.
Mm-hmm.
We're just way better in Europe to hide our problem because we have 80 incineration plants just in Germany where we burn all the trash that we're using.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see it in nature. This infrastructure is not there in India, fortunately, to some degree. But yeah,
I've seen some supermarkets pop up in Switzerland. I'm sure also in Germany where they do not package goods. Basically, you come with your own containers and bags, and then basically refill or use sort of this kind of principle. It doesn't look very scalable. I think just again being pragmatic for everyone. As a consumer, Joel, how can I reduce my plastic in your point of view? Sort of, I don't know how many kilos I produce, but it's definitely too much.
Yeah. In the end, look at the waste that you produce, see where the bulk is, right? I don't know your consumption habits. If you're a smoker, stop smoking. But that's obviously bring a refillable water bottle. But in the end, I think the important point here is if we want to solve the problem, we cannot put the responsibility on the consumer, because as consumers, we are wired for convenience. And that is something that corporations use to win market share, right? The more convenient the service, the more convenient the product that I'm offering, the more people are going to buy it. We can see that with the supermarkets that are now delivering to your doorstep, where you don't even have to leave the house anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Great service. Everybody's using it. And plastic is the currency of convenience. It makes things just so much more easy, right? And, believing that the 10 billion people that we are going to be soon on this planet will all change their behavior is highly unrealistic in my eyes, and that they're willing to give up on convenience is highly unlikely. So the change needs to come from the corporations that sell the products. It needs to be very easy, very convenient for the consumer to use less plastic. And in my eyes, that's the only way forward, right? Because, I'm currently 15 kilogram over what my ideal weight is. And I know that this immediately affects my health, it will shorten my lifetime. And I struggle changing my behavior in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's something so abstract as protecting the environment, I don't believe that a lot of people will change their behaviors.
We always hear about sort of with our, we can make a change with our feet, right? By not buying certain products or by not going to certain supermarkets, or, just because we kind of act as a whole. Is there maybe a sort of a governmental aspect or sort of a society aspect where we could make a change, or is it all linked to this individual behavior? I mean, let me, as an example, they forbid these plastic straws in the EU. I love that.
Mm.
When I have get a drink at one of the sort of fast food chains, they now give me a paper straw, which I think is a good step towards. But everything in that paper cup, paper lid, and paper straw, I mean, still includes plastic, I'm sure. There's coating in there and everything. Can we make it? We can't change our behavior, but should we still act on certain things, or should we just lean back? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that obviously the first thing is do the wave check, see if companies work with cleanup, because that means that they're taking their responsibility seriously. And I can say with a very high confidence that the subgroup of brands that partner with us take reduction incredibly seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think every single brand that we talk to has reduced their plastic footprint over the past years. That's the one thing. And absolutely do choose the brands that are doing better than the others, because we need to also help them win more market share, right? We need to empower these brands that are doing the things that we want them to do for a better tomorrow, and support them.
How can I act in the supermarket when I look at products? Like, should I avoid certain packaging, or how can I? Is it just the labels? Is it? I mean, sorry, I don't mean just the labels. So it's a very German and Swiss thing. I think we put a lot of labels on things. So aside from the Nutri-Score and the fact whether it's organic or not, there should be another packaging label, I guess, on there.
Yeah, you see more and more brands using our label, so
okay.
obviously support that.
Nice.
3 waves on black background. There's also the first Swiss brands out there using it. Else, I mean, what I always say is like the most sustainable product is the one that you didn't buy. That is the first thing. If you want, but at the same time, right? It's like if you want a bag of chips, they will all come in multi-layer packaging, every single one of them, because that's the way how you package them. With this aluminum layer, you're keeping the moisture out, so you will get crisp chips, and it's difficult to change that. Obviously, you can go to a no packaging store and maybe they will have chips,
or make your own. It's going to be that's going to be solving your weight problem as well if you have to make your chips each time, right?
Yeah, exactly. But see, this is what I meant earlier. It's like, do we honestly believe that the 10 billion people will do that instead of just going to the supermarket and buy a bag of chips for 79 cents?
100%. Yeah, I fully agree. It's a bit absurd that we're reverting back to sort of rethinking the packaging, although we got that convenience already. So I fully agree with you. How is that in India, Lakshmi? When you think of sort of changing people's behaviors or making them think of less plastic, although it's now everywhere?
Yeah, I think to some extent I do agree with Joel. It's not completely on the consumers. However, I think I personally also believe that maybe you can't change everything one go, but you can definitely decide on some aspects, right? And then see if, for example, I don't know, personal care products or anything like that, right? If I would think that first, if you're able to be more aware and not just like push it away saying that I don't want to understand this. And if I think that's what is really helping when we are working with local groups and local communities. Initially, they would say that they don't understand any of this and they just want us to be collecting the plastic. That's it. Take my trash away. That's what I want. But with continuous engagement and trying to get them to understand the larger problem, they see beyond just, okay, taking the trash away and then understanding, okay, what's happening to this trash, where exactly it's landing up, why is this plastic better than that plastic. I think these are things that one can be aware of. It's not impossible. There's so much information out there. And maybe choose 1 or 2 things in your life that you can reduce your plastic footprint, reduce your carbon footprint. I guess we will all lose weight, which is also
exactly. I mean, that's where I'm starting myself. Sort of maybe the chips. It was an example for myself. I should start making my own chips. I'm pretty sure that I would start burning more calories and maybe just not go there anyway. Is there is there an alternative?
I can tell you personal experience. I started baking cake thinking that will be great, but the amount of butter you put in cake, I stopped eating cake.
Maybe that's a whole another conversation. I think as soon as you start, not just what's in the packaging, but also what's in the food that you're actually eating at 97 cents, might also start make you think to change your behavior a little bit if you start to make it yourself. Is there any alternative packaging that you would recommend aside from plastic? Like I mentioned Tetra Pak before. We talked about cardboard, paper, glass. I know they all come with pros and cons. But would you say is a glass bottle better than a plastic bottle, or can I compare at all?
It's difficult, and I think this is actually where the market should develop into, right? Because I have to use one last abbreviation, and that is LCA. It stands for life cycle analysis, and it looks at what is the total impact on the environment, including carbon footprint, toxicity, all different kinds of aspects, if I use one material or another. And in the end, you will have a number and you will see it for all the different dimensions. And, I talked to a company recently. They said it's like we switched to cardboard, even though we know that it has a higher impact on the environment than using plastic. But the consumer hates plastic so much that we still made the switch because we know it's going to sell better, right? And it's going to be different for all different kinds of aspects, right? If you use glass and you're a local farmer and you have the same customers that always come to your farm to pick up the glass bottle and bring it back, then glass is a wonderful material because you can just reuse the bottle, clean it, and use it again for milk. If you distribute globally and you have no chance to get your hands back on the product, then glass might be the wrong thing because it's very heavy. If you ship it far, that increases the carbon impact. Then if you need to recycle the glass instead of reuse it, it takes 800 degrees to melt down glass. It takes 200 degrees to melt down plastic. So there's a temperature difference of 600 degrees, which is all energy savings if you go into a recycling process, right? So it's not a very simple thing to do or to say. And everything has its own carbon footprint. Everything has its own impact on the environment. The important thing is that people understand what that is, that brands understand what their impact on the environment is. And that that goes back to our core hypothesis, that these externalities, that this negative impact on the environment is priced into the product to ideally revert it, right? That should be the goal.
So maybe to have the means to revert it with the work that you do at Cleanhub and with your partners. I have to say, like, I really I followed the Cleanhub story since you guys founded it. I think it's a great thing that you do, but for everybody, I mean, you can see that, there's a lot of we struggle a little bit with sort of tangible advice because it's an extremely complex problem. I mean, Joel started with sort of surfing, sort of the ocean by itself it's its own topic on how to remove the plastic that's already in there. And if we work ourselves backwards through the rivers that it goes to when there's flooding or waste management in some of those countries, including ours, and then I think it all starts also with production, but none of these elements by itself will solve it, I guess, right? It's such a complex...
There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
There is no silver bullet. And I think I forgot one thing. One of the best things that you as a consumer can do is stick to the way how you are supposed to separate your waste in your country. Check in, see what goes in which bin, because if you sort correctly, there's going to be a way higher recovery rate of the material. And likewise, there's an adverse effect. If you put it in the wrong bin, you're going to destroy that process. You're going to make it more expensive because, I don't know, a piece of wood in plastic recycling is wrongly placed. It's going to disturb the process. Sorting it out will cost more money. All these things.
I have two examples for that out of my own experience. So one, I used to work for a glass producer, so a bottle producer here in Switzerland, and you basically destroy a whole batch of production if somebody threw ceramics, sort of a ceramic cup or something into recycling. So you get actually ceramic spots on the product, which actually looks quite pretty, but it basically ruins everything. And the other thing, which was a little bit disturbing to me, is back to the plastic bags. I think they have these green waste, so sort of food waste, what do you call that? Sort of when it destroys itself in nature, compostable bags that you can use for your green container. But I learned in the process that there is people throwing plastic in there. So, I mean, just using normal plastic bags. So in the end, they cannot use any of those packaged food waste because they just assume it could be plastic, which is such a weird thing. We're trying to fix a problem, make it again convenient because you don't have these bags to put your food waste in, but you're creating another problem down the road. So yeah, just trying to share a few things. So thanks for that advice. Let's stick to the recycle process. No pizza boxes in my cardboard recycling. I've learned that. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for joining. We definitely put the links in the show notes also to have a look at the brands that work with Cleanhub today. Please follow them on social, and we will definitely have another conversation again later on because it's such a complex topic. And it was a very fun experiment with both of you to have two guests on. So I hope everybody enjoyed having multiple perspectives here. Thank you both. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for listening in. We really enjoyed it. Hope you did too. Tune in again next Friday for the next episode. And in the meantime, please subscribe to this podcast. Also give us a positive review wherever you're listening in. And I hope you come and listen again. Have a great week and see you soon.